More Wilds of Eldraine cards have just been shown, so today we're going through a bunch of the new cards in the upcoming set, Wilds of Eldraine, and we're going to see how good these cards can be in the new standard meta. Let's get into it. There have been a ton of new cards coming out in Wilds of Eldraine. Let's dive straight into the first one for today. We have S9 Antic. So this is a mythic 4-mana sorcery, okay? So it's, for each creature your opponent controls, you create a cursed roll token and attach it to that creature. So basically it becomes a 1/1, so it really makes it a small creature. They still got their abilities, but it makes it a 1/1. Then you may cast it though it had flash if you pay 2 more. So let's say you want to play this as flash, you pay in 6 mana to basically make all of your opponent's creatures 1/1s. They still get all their abilities. Not too bad, you know, if you're facing against creatures that don't really have, you know, many abilities, they're just raw stats, then it's okay. 4-mana sorcery is kind of weak, you know, if you're playing this, would normally be maybe a control style list. You could play this in a tempo list, but to be perfectly honest, I think is a little bit too slow. I think if this was an instant for 4 mana and had this ability, fine. But I think the fact you have to pay 2 extra is a bit weak. Then we got Virtue of Persistence. There seems to be a cycle of these. We haven't got all of them yet, but we have the black one here. 7 mana. It is an adventure card. 7 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield on your control. So not your graveyard, any graveyard. But then it has an adventure, which is good because there is a lot of mana for that effect. 2 mana, sorcery, target creature gets -3 to the end of turn. You gain 2 life. This is a very, very playable card. Why? Well, the adventure side is not too bad, right? 2 mana, -3/-3, you can deal with a bunch of different creatures in the format right now, you know, early game, and you get some life, which is quite nice. But then if you get to the 7 mana, this is a huge effect. Now, back in the day, we had the original Shield Druid, which was a 7 mana 6/6, which caused your opponent to sacrifice creatures, but you can bring stuff back every turn on your turn. Now, this doesn't make your opponent sacrifice creatures, it's just like 1/2 of that, but this is an enchantment. It's a lot harder to remove than just a creature, and on top of that, you do have the upside of it having an adventure cost that is kind of relevant. You know, you get cheap early game removal, then in a grindy matchup, you're going back and forth, you can play this, and be pretty sweet. This in a control style list, maybe you're playing like blue, black, Esper, something like that, Grixis even, kill creature, you know, early game threat, you know, develop that board state, you know, you kind of just hold the fort, slam this down, 7 mana. This is kind of like not kind of like a Shark Typhoon, but you know, if you resolve a Shark Typhoon, you're going to be really far ahead, right? If you resolve this, I feel like you're going to be pretty far ahead because you can start taking stuff from your opponent's graveyard. I mean, you can take stuff from your own if you had some, but this is still pretty good. So I could see this seeing a couple of copies here and there. I mean, this does stack as well. Like, you can have multiple of these. This makes it even more crazy. But I'll definitely try this out in a control style list. Then we have Feral Encounter. So double green sorcery. Okay. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Then you may exile a creature card from among them for the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exile card this turn. Okay, that's pretty good. The card advantage. At the beginning of the next combat phase of this turn, target creature you control deals damage to its power to up to 1 target creature you don't control. So you get, so it's 2 mana, you get some good card advantage. You get to look at the top 5, which is a decent amount of cards. You get to choose a creature to cast, alright? And then you get to basically fight, but it's not kind of fight, it's deal damage. You got removal with built-in card advantage to go and grab yourself a creature. That's really, really good. Like, you could do 2 mana, let's say you got 4 mana in play, right? 2 mana, you grab a 2-drop, you can cast a 2-drop, and then you kill something. That seems pretty good. I feel like this is going to be a really good card in that mid game, you know, and late game, where you can use the majority of your mana for good effect. Like, you can pay 2 mana, you can grab a 4-drop or a 5-drop, and then you play it, and then you can deal some damage. That to me is very, very strong. We haven't really seen mono green do very well in standard. Like, this will kind of go in a mono green list just because it is double green. I mean, you could play it in a like green black splash, red green splash, something like that, then maybe. But this is actually a really good card. I'm looking forward to building around this. Next up, we have Rankles Prank. So Rankle was probably not going to be in this set, but we do have a sorcery that kind of has similar effects. Let's get into it. So 4 mana sorcery, choose 1 or more. Each player discards 2 cards. Each player loses 4 life. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. That's a lot of stuff for 4 mana. It's not bad, but you've got to you could play around this, right? So let's say your opponent's got 2 creatures and you don't have any. You could be like, well, you know what? We both sacrifice 2 creatures. If you're playing in a grindy matchup, right, you play this maybe in a blue-black list, mono-black mid-range, anything like that, making yourself discard 2 cards is quite savage, okay? Because you're basically paying 3 cards, essentially, right? This card plus the 2 you discard. But let's say you got no cards in hand. Let's say you top deck this, or this is the last card in your hand, and you're just like, you know what? Boom. You discard 2 cards. We both sacrifice 2 creatures, let's say you don't have any, and then you go, we both lose 4 life. That's actually pretty savage. Pretty savage. One thing I would like in this is, I guess, kind of obviously trying to reflect Rankle. Now, Rankle had an ability where both players can lose a life and draw a card. I would like to see if we had that in this. So this had, each player discards 2 cards. Each player loses life. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And then maybe it could be, instead of the life loss, it could be maybe each player loses 2 life and draws 2 cards. I kind of feel that might be quite good, but that might be a bit too powerful. But this is still pretty good. I don't know if it's going to see much play, as there's so much good removal at the moment. If this was instant, then possibly. But for the fact it's sorcery, not too sure. Okay, right. We have a rabbit unicorn. We got the regal bunnycorn coming in. 2 mana, star. Pound toughness are each equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. This is actually pretty good. For a 2-drop, that's pretty good. Now, we've seen 2-drops in the past where it's like it gets a +1/+1 counter for every artifact you control. It gets a +1/+1 counter for every creature you control, or every creature in your graveyard, or whatever it may be. But the fact is that this is all non-land permanents. We're making tokens, we're making enchantments, food tokens, whatever it may be. This is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just trying to think, right? Let's say you play this on turn 2. Say turn 1, you play a 1-drop, right? You play this on turn 2, it's a 2 mana 2/2. Okay, nothing that exciting. Next turn you play a wedding announcement. Okay, now it's a 3/3, and then you make the token. Now it's a 4/4, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. It on its own is not very good. It's just a 1/1, but for it to get bigger, equal to the amount of non-land permanents you control, it's actually pretty good. You could put this in a mono white aggro list. You could put this in a token list. If you're making a bunch of food tokens, treasure tokens, whatever it may be. This is actually a pretty nice one. I think it could see some play. Alright, next up we have Food Fight. 2 mana enchantment. Artifacts you control have paid 2, sacrifice artifact. It deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of permanents named Food Fight you control. Yeah, this is pretty bad. This is not a great... This is kind of a fun card. I wouldn't say it's very good. So you got to pay 2 mana. Let's say you had a food in play. You had this and you had a food token. You got to pay 2 mana. So instead of gaining the life, you shoot something for 1. Okay, you have 2 food fights in play, you sacrifice a food token, shoot. I think for this to be playable, it should also make food, like when it comes into play. Imagine if it came to play and it was like, make a food token or make 2 food tokens. I think then that would probably be okay, but the fact it doesn't, I know it's any artifact, doesn't have to be food, but food's going to be probably the most common alongside treasures. And would you really want to sacrifice treasure to do 1 damage? Probably not. So yeah, I do kind of feel like this is a little bit poor. And then we have Lady of Laughter. It says from Jumpstart, but it might be in the set. I'm not too sure. But we'll take a look at it anyway. 5 mana for a 4/5 flyer. It's a fairy. Okay, it's not blue-black. It's white. Oh, it might be an angel. At the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. That's actually pretty good. 5 mana 4/5 flying body is not too bad. Making tokens. Doesn't have to be tokens. If you play a creature, I don't know, you're playing a creature enchantment or 2 creatures, something like that. You draw a bunch of cards. That's actually pretty good. Like, I actually think that's actually not too bad. And the thing is it actually counts itself, right? So you play this card and you play 1 more other card. Let's say you play a creature or a token came to play or an artifact or food, whatever. You get to draw a card. Not bad. I do feel like it probably could do with maybe a little bit extra push, but for it to be a white fairy is quite interesting. But a 4/5 body is actually pretty decent. That has some built-in card draw. If this is legal in standard, it might see play, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, more fairy stuff. Fairy Slumber Party, 6 mana sorcery. Return all creatures to their owner's hands. For each opponent who controlled a creature returned this way, you create 2 1/1 blue fairy creatures with flying and can't block. With flying and can only block creatures with flying. Okay, so you're paying 6 mana. You bounce everything back to everyone's hands, but then every creature you bounce your opponent, you get 2 fairies. Now this is better than the card that we looked at earlier, the sorcery in, pay 2 extra mana. This is sorcery, it is 6 mana. Let's say you pushed everything back from your opponent. Like let's say they had 4 creatures in play, you like, yep, boom, all go back to your hand, you get 8 fairies. That's a huge tempo play. That's not bad. That's not bad. Does it again jump start, so we have to wait and see whether or not it's actually going to be in the set. But if it is going to be in the set, this is better than the other cards. Still not amazing, but definitely better than the mythic we just saw. Right, Malevolent Witch Kite. So we got another 6-drop, 5/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens, then draw that many cards. That's actually pretty good. That's pretty good. So you get a 6 mana 5/4 flyer. Let's say you had, I don't know, let's say you had 3 artifacts, you had 2 food tokens and a treasure token. You sacrifice all 3, draw 3 cards. That's pretty good. Like 6 mana is a lot of mana, but that is a pretty good effect if you just sacrifice a bunch of tokens, a bunch of non-creature tokens. That's actually pretty decent. So this could see play. There's a lot of good strong black cards at the moment, so I kind of feel like you struggle maybe to find a home. Again, it says jumpstart, so we're not too sure if it's definitely going to be in the set, but if it is, actually pretty playable. Right, then we have another card coming in. We've got a red one now. We've got the Ogre, Chitter, Lord. So 6 mana 6/5 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, create 2 1/1 black rat tokens with they can't block. Then if you control 5 or more rats, each rat you control gets +2/+0 to the end of the turn. So this is basically like kind of a Titan, but not as good as the old Titans. So it's not 6 mana 6/6, 6 mana 6/5 with Menace. When it's in the battlefield and attacks, you get 2 1/1s. That's okay. They can't block, but if you have a bunch of them, they do get bigger. Hey look, it's no Grave Titan. Grave Titan's way better than this. But this is still a potential, like, again, it's jumpstart, so I'm not too sure if it's going to be in the set, but if it is, like, in standard, but if it is going to be in standard, I just don't see it being very good. It's quite cool and fun if you build a flavorful rat deck, but it just doesn't do it for me. Alright, we got one more jumpstart card coming in. We got the Wildwood Mentor, 3 mana for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So any token doesn't have to be a creature. And then whenever he attacks, another target attacking creature gets +X/+X, where X is its power. Yeah, pretty good. Like, pretty good. Like, you play this, you make a bunch of tokens. Again, doesn't have to be creatures. Doesn't have to be 1/1s or anything like that. It could literally be food, it could be treasures, it could be whatever, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I would like if this had trample, to be fair. I would say if this had trample, this would be pretty sweet. But the fact it can then buff something else when it attacks, equal to its power, that's actually pretty cool. Like, that's not bad. So that's, I would say it's a fun card to build around. But I kind of feel like it needs trample. Alright, we have another green card coming in. We got Questing Druid. So we got a 2-drop 1/1. Whenever you cast a spell that's white, blue, black, and red, so anything but green, you put a +1/+1 counter on them. Right, okay, and then Seek the Beast, 2 mana instant, exile top 2 cards of your library. To the end turn, you may play those cards. So this reminds me of an old card back in the day called Quirion Dryad, I believe it was called. It was a 2 mana 1/1, and then whenever you cast a spell, I'm pretty sure it was any other color but green, it got a +1/+1 counter. So this kind of feels like it's basically that creature. But then this also has an adventure side, and the adventure side is okay, it's not amazing. So you kind of want to build this in a 2, 3, 4 color deck, 5 color deck. Is that viable at the moment? I mean, most of the decks we see are either mono or 2 color. You might get the odd 3 mana deck going around, maybe for a push of his ramp, but you wouldn't be playing this in a ramp deck. This is kind of like a mid-rangey deck. You could play like Gruul or something like that. I don't think this is a very strong card. It's a bit weak in my opinion. The adventure side is quite cool, but probably won't see play. Then we have the Iron Crag. So 2 mana, legendary artifact, taps for colorless. Okay, so we've got 2 mana rock, to be fair, in standard. That's actually pretty strong. Then whenever a legendary creature enters battlefield under your control, you may have it become a legendary equipment named the Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains equip 3, and then the creature gets +3/+3 and loses all other abilities. This is actually pretty good. Like, just for it to be a mana rock in itself, in any deck, in standard, is good, right? However, you need to build this in legend deck. Now, Esper Legends has been going around for a while, hasn't been strong recently. Would you play this in Esper Legends deck? I mean, it could help, obviously, with mana. It's colorless, not any color, but it does ramp you to some extent. But then you get equipment where you lose all your abilities, so you basically just make a big dude, right? You just make a big guy swinging in with a sword. I mean, the flavor of this is amazing, but swinging in with a sword, lose all other abilities. I mean, look, if you slap this on your Shieldred, you kind of lose the power of what Shieldred brings. Same with all the others. You slap this on, I don't know, I mean, an Adeline or something like that, again, probably not very good. So what would you slap this onto? You know, what are you going to equip this with? It ideally wants to be with a legendary, and most legendaries have an ability. You don't really have a legendary that's just a raw power creature, and that's what you care about stat-wise. Don't know. It's interesting. This will see play in like Commander, of course, but for Standard, having a 2-mana mana rock, it is legendary. You might see 1 or 2 copies in decks, potentially, but I wouldn't run 4 of. Could see play, but we'll have to wait and see. So there you have it, guys. Those are some more Wilds of Eldraine spoilers coming. There's some exciting cards. You know, we had a few jumpstart cards coming in there. Some of them are strong, some of them are kind of weak. The Iron Crag, to me, has the potential to be good. Having a 2-mana rock in Standard is actually pretty strong. It being legendary is obviously key, so you don't just ram and jam a ton of them. But again, it makes the legendary creatures a little bit weak. Feral Encounter is a sorcery I'm really looking forward to, especially in like a mono green shell. Mono green hasn't seen much success recently, and there's some really strong mono green cards. So it'd be nice to see, you know, a good Card of Iron spell with some built-in removal. Really, really good. Actually, really strong. And some of the blue sorceries we've seen, they're not the greatest, to be fair. The Rankle sorcery, I feel like if it was an instant, it'd be pretty good, but it's competing against a ton of amazing black removal spells right now. So there's some good cards so far. But definitely tune in for tomorrow for some more Wilds of Eldraine spoilers. If you made this fun to the video, guys, and you've enjoyed it, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe for more Magic content. And drop a comment down below. What is your favourite card that you've seen so far in this set? And guys, make sure to tune in tomorrow for more Wilds of Eldraine spoilers. But that is it from me in this video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.